What up, y'all? What's the deal? Welcome back, or welcome for the first time to No Moral Victories, man. Like, comment, subscribe right now. Tell me how you feel today. Today, we are reacting to the top 20 dangerous kids reacting to getting life sentences, man. These are some bad kids, man. Let's see what they do.
Are innocent and pure by nature, and even the thought of them doing something evil or committing crimes just seems impossible. But believe it or not, there have been more than a few cases of juveniles committing crimes so horrible that they were actually tried
Ooh,
and
free
sentenced
the
as adults.
gods.
These cold hearted kids, whose offenses would make the bravest of us shiver in fear, were, however, unable to hide their emotions.
You in elementary school getting escorted out in handcuffs, man. Come
They were
on,
given strict
kids.
sentences. Some cried and wailed, while others only offended the judges and juries even more by their pretentious behavior, but all of them were made to pay for their wrongdoings. Here now are 20 most dangerous kids reacting to serving life in prison. Number 1. Roxana Sikorsky. Roxana was a
Roxana.
Plymouth Township teenager who pled guilty to plotting to take the lives of her family back in
Don't start crying now, man.
2014. The 15-year-old conspired with her older boyfriend to take the lives of her adoptive parents and younger brother, and prosecutors charged her as an adult for the attempted attack, but her parents defended her, saying that she suffered from a mental illness and was under the sway of her 23-year-old boyfriend,
Damn.
Michael Rivera. Roxana started out as an ideal child who just began acting out when she hit adolescence. She was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and post traumatic stress disorder and was put on medication. She met Rivera on Facebook, and her behavior became worse as she began sneaking around with him. She even ran away with him for a few days and was found at his house. She apparently wanted to take their
Man.
lives because the parents filed a statutory assault complaint against Rivera. On October 17th of that year, Rivera planted himself outside the family's home and texted Roxana instructions on what to do. The teenager attacked 12-year-old Luke,
Hold
said
on.
Roxana
What? The throat.
instructions on what to do. The teenager attacked 12-year-old Lucas, and after attempting to do the same to her sister, she fled the house but was arrested at Rivera's home, where she told the police that they were planning to get married. She was tearful during sentencing and
Big
apologized to
life.
her family
Life.
for all that she
Life.
had done. She was trembling and weeping, and her remorse was quite visible. But that didn't stop the judge from sentencing her to up to 20 years behind bars for the crimes that she had committed. Number 2.
Get him
Lionel
out.
Tate. Lionel Tate is perhaps the
Lionel
youngest
Tate.
American citizen to have received a sentence of life imprisonment for his crimes. The boy was 14 years old in 2001 when he would be convicted for taking the life of a 6-year-old named Tiffany Unick in 1998 in Broward County, Florida. Tate's mother, Kathleen, was babysitting the two children when she decided to leave the boy alone with Tiffany to take a short nap upstairs. His lawyer defended him, saying that the 12-year-old boy weighed a whopping 165 pounds and was just playing with the 6-year-old girl. He
Oh,
argued that Tate
man.
accidentally hurt the girl while he showed her professional wrestling moves. Her liver was lacerated as a result of the blows,
Whoa.
and she also sustained many other injuries, which included
He
a
was
skull
wrestling for
fracture,
real.
fractured ribs, and swelling in the brain. The prosecution stated that the girl would have sustained similar injuries if she had fallen from a 3-story building. Judge Joel T.
Ooh.
Lazarus
Come
sentenced
on,
Lionel
Lionel.
Tate to life in prison, saying that his acts were not that of a playful child. He behaved in a cold, callous, and cruel manner towards her, and Tate remained mostly expressionless and silent during sentencing. In 2004, a state appeals court overturned his conviction on the basis that his mental competency had not been evaluated, and eventually he would be released on 1 year's house arrest and 10 years probation.
Oh, wow.
Number 3.
Got out of there.
TJ Lane. TJ Lane was a
TJ
17-year-old
Lane.
juvenile and former student at Chardon High School, and on February 27th, he took the lives of 3 Chardon High students and injured 3 others. Witnesses stated that Lane had personal problems with one of his victims. He used to ride the same bus as the victims to school. The boy used a .22 caliber handgun, and 2 of the wounded students were hospitalized.
It seemed like bullying got something to do with this one, man. Seemed like boy might have been getting bullied.
and one of them sustained injuries that left him permanently paralyzed. Lane was
Damn,
indicted on 6
dog.
counts, but because he was 17 years old at the time that he committed the crimes, he was detained as a juvenile while the authorities
Ooh.
decided whether or not to try him as an adult.
They gonna try. They off the rip. They tried him as a teenager, but they tried the 14-year-old black dude last one as a straight up adult. This dude
Or a
killed
child.
three,
He
injured
would end
three
up taking
others.
the lives of 3, and he wasn't even sorry for taking them. He arrived wearing a blue button down shirt, but when he sat down, he unbuttoned it, revealing the shirt that he was wearing underneath. It was a white t shirt with the word killer written on it. He was given a chance to speak to the court, but he only made the situation worse for himself by saying some incredibly
Shirt says killer, man. Just don't even hear him out. Just give him that life, man.
hateful things to his victims' families. He even laughed at them by saying some incredibly hateful things to his victims' families. He even laughed at the mother of a victim while she made a statement. Lane pled guilty to all the charges and given 3 life sentences without parole.
Ooh. Get him
Number
out.
4, Antonio Barbeau. Antonio was just 14 years
The
old when the
crime.
court sentenced him to 36 long years in prison.
Don't do the crime if you can't do the time, man. It's so simple.
The boy was convicted for taking the life of his 78-year-old grandmother in what seemed to be a
Not Granny,
blitz attack.
man.
He used a hatchet to 78-year-old
Not Granny, man.
grandmother in what seemed to be a blitz attack. He used a hatchet to assault the poor old woman and was visiting Barbara Olson's home along with a friend named Nathan. The 2 boys were planning to steal money from her house. They plummeted on her using a hatchet and a hammer.
That's your grandma, bro. Just ask her for some money. Just ask her, or she gonna point you in the right direction. Young man, go out there and cut some grass for me. I'll give you some money. Come
And the
on.
entire community was shocked by how mercilessly and brutally they assaulted not just any woman, but his own great grandmother. When Antonio was sentenced, he was given a chance to read out his statement, but
Who
he was
gives a
too
damn?
emotional to finish it. He burst into tears while speaking as the
Who
severity of his
cares?
punishment dawned on him.
Give
He
him
was
that
unable to
life.
keep going, and his attorney stepped in and read the statement on his behalf, who also got tearful while doing so. Reports would state that Antonio's grandmother had invited the 2 boys inside her home in 2013, not knowing what they would do to her. Judge Timothy Von Akron said that the 36-year sentence was a minimum punishment for what Antonio had done. He also confessed that he had never seen anything like this horrendous crime in 24 years as a career judge.
Get out
Number
of here.
5,
Killing
Stuart
Granny
Harling.
like that, bro.
Stuart Harling was an introverted teenager who spent most of his time in the virtual world of ultra-violent computer games and inappropriate websites.
Hey, man. You gotta watch your kids on these iPads and stuff, man. You see they trying to imitate shit like that, man.
No one knew that in the darkness of his room, he was plotting to be a famous serial killer.
Wow.
The 19-year-old abandoned his family and career in accountancy and dedicated himself to his fantasies, but soon realized it wasn't enough, so he decided to take the life of 32-year-old Cheryl Moss. He later told psychiatrists that he decided to become a serial killer after watching a documentary on the infamous crimes of Richard Ramirez, who robbed 13 people of their lives in the Los Angeles area. He explained that he felt nothing while hurting Miss Moss.
Pay attention to your kids, man. Don't let them sit there in their rooms all day, and you don't know what's going on with them, man.
And to him,
Go
she was
outside and
like
play,
any other
man.
animated enemy on a computer screen in one of his games. Judge Brian Barker sentenced the young man to a minimum of 20 years in prison, and he also spoke to Stewart and said that he had demonstrated that his horrifying actions meant very little to him. Number 6, Jessica Carnlin. The
Uh-oh.
17-year-old Jessica crashed a car into the
Damn.
Wyoming Medical Center, and as a result, 2 people lost their lives. She pled guilty to 2 counts of vehicular homicide. She would be driving a vehicle eastbound on 2nd Street, approaching the Wyoming Medical Center, when the vehicle swerved over the
What
curb
is
and
going
hit a
on?
sign just in front of the hospital and then the building itself. The vehicle
Look
swerved
at the lady in the dark blue, how she jumped into the man in white arms.
over the curb and hit a sign just in front of the hospital and then the building itself. 27-year-old Brandon Avery and Amanda Strickland also 27, died because of the injuries that they sustained in the crash.
Dumbass
Carnlin was
shit,
also
man.
injured but did survive. Later on, investigators discovered a can of air duster inside the car, and in an interview with police, she admitted that it made her high.
She was high off that bullshit, man. God damn, air dust?
It was also determined that the car was
Getting
going as
high off
fast
of
as
that.
76 miles per hour at the time of the collision. No one was wearing their seatbelts, and the judge would sentence her to between 12 to 16 years in prison. Jessica was incredibly emotional at the trial, and tears could be seen rolling down her flustered face while she spoke in the court and displayed her remorse. Number 7. Caleb Sharp. Caleb Sharp was the perpetrator of the Freeman school shooting tragedy. He was sentenced to spend 40 years in prison by the
That's
judge
it?
and pled
School
guilty for
shooting?
taking the life of a classmate and injuring 3 others in the 2017 Spokane shooting. The students were
Look at him.
in the hallway when he assaulted them, and the courtroom was full of people the day that he was sentenced. More than 200 people shared impact statements and urged the judge, Michael Price, to impose the maximum sentence before he sentenced the young man.
School shooting
The
gotta be
defense attorney
automatic
asked
life,
for a
man.
20-year sentence, but the prosecution proposed 35 years to life. Sharp will receive credit for 5 years that he's already spent in jail, and prior to his sentencing, he apologized to his victims and the mother of the boy, Sam Strahan, who died in the shooting. He asked
R.I.P.
for their
R.I.P.
forgiveness while speaking to the court, though he didn't react or display any emotion when the sentence was announced. Number 8. Bever Brothers. Back in
Bros.
2015,
Man,
5
that
members
boy look like he off them drugs right there, boy. Stay away from me.
of the Bever family were found dead in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. 2 family members, a 2-year-old baby girl, and a 13-year-old girl, fortunately survived. The older girl identified 2 of her elder brothers, Robert, who was 18, and Michael, who was 16, as the assailants. The 2 young men were eventually arrested and were charged for their crimes. According to testimony, Robert wanted to become a famous serial killer. He pled
Damn.
guilty to the charges against
Why do these kids want to be famous serial killers, man? What? This is the second or third time already we heard that, man. Come on, dog. Kids, do something with your life, dog.
in 2017
Do y'all blame the media, parents? Who do y'all blame for kids wanting to be serial killers, man? That has never crossed my mind.
and was then sentenced to life imprisonment without parole.
That's crazy.
Michael, on the other hand, also gave a frightening testimony and was convicted by the jury. He was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms.
Damn.
Michael initially smiled when his sentence was read and then wiped his eyes. Besides that, the brothers mostly remained emotionless. Number 9. Alex and
5
Derek
life
King.
sentences.
The young Alex King appeared to be well spoken, neat, and sharp in court. Looking at him, no one would
Man, they're
think
not about to get this little dude right here life, man. Look at him.
appeared to be well spoken, neat, and sharp in court. Looking at him,
He
no
look
one
10
would
years
think that he
old,
was
man.
capable of committing a heinous crime. The 12-year-old Alex, along with his 13-year-old brother, took the life of his own father, Terry King, on November 26th of 2001. The 2 boys beat their father with an aluminum baseball bat
Whoa.
and then set fire to the family.
Whoa.
2 boys beat their father with an aluminum baseball bat and then set fire to the family home in Cantonment, Florida. A family friend named Ricky Chavez was also convicted for being an accessory to the crime,
Wow.
as he
The friend of the dad's friend was in on it with his sons killing the dad. Wow.
hid the boys in his trailer. Terry was 40 years old at the time of his death.
Wow.
The 2 boys claimed that they did this to put an end to the mental abuse that they had suffered at the hands of their father. According to them, he would stare them down and spank them, going out of their way. Prosecution tried both Chavez and the boys for the same crime. Chavez, however, got acquitted, but the King brothers were convicted. Derek King was sentenced to 8 years in prison, while Alex received a 7-year sentence in 2002.
Wow. You kill somebody at a young age, like 12 or something, like, man, what? Them dudes is out right now. That was 2012. They're out right now, man.
At the age of 18, Alex was released after serving 6 years,
Hell
and
no.
Derek would be released in March of 2009 at the age of 20. The boys calmly testified in court and during sentencing that they stood still, expressionless with their heads down. Number 10.
Hell
Philip
no.
Chisholm.
Watch out for
Philip
them right
Chisholm may
there,
have been
man.
a 14-year-old boy, but he committed heinous crimes.
14
Chisholm.
where?
Philip Chisholm
He's 14 where?
may have been a 14-year-old boy, but he
14?
committed heinous crimes that landed him in prison for life. He assaulted and then took the life of his own math teacher. Colleen Ritzer was a Danvers high school teacher who lost her life at the hands of her own pupil.
Damn.
Salem Superior Court Judge David Lowy described Chisholm as brutal and senseless when he pronounced the sentence. He also stated that Colleen Ritzer lived a life of quiet heroism, and the crashing waves of this tragedy will never wane. Philip's lawyer argued that he was mentally ill, but this contention was rejected by the jury.
You can always try the mentally ill. You can always try it. It looks like everybody at least gonna try it, man. It's not always gonna work, but they gonna try it.
Be sentenced to serve life in prison with the possibility of parole in 25 years. He also received 40 years concurrent sentence for the abuse and robbery charges. Chisholm's
Man.
mother, Diane, sobbed quietly when he was sentenced, and she also apologized to the Ritzer family for what her son had done. He stood in front of the judge with a poker face, showing no emotions and expressing no remorse for his actions.
Sheesh, them boys gotta try to act tough, man. That's crazy, trying to act tough
For
in them
11,
situations.
James Fairweather.
James
was
Fairweather.
also
Oh my
one of
God.
these teen criminals who fantasized about becoming a famous serial killer. He was sentenced to 27 years in prison for stabbing 2 people. Both of his victims lost their lives. The first victim, James Atfeld, had a brain injury and was assaulted by Fairweather in Colchester, Essex, on the 24th of March 2014. 3 months later, he struck again, and this time the victim was Nahid Almania, a 30.
So he got away
Later,
the
he
first
struck
one.
again, and this time the victim was Nahid
Got away the first
Almania,
one.
a 31-year-old Saudi student at the University of Essex. James was apprehended while planning a third assault in May of 2015. He confessed that he was responsible and pled guilty for both the killings. He was just 15 years old at the time that he had committed the crimes and attended Colchester Academy. He was a victim of bullying for his prominent years and also struggled at school partially.
Ain't no excuses to killing somebody, man. Ain't no excuses, dog. I don't want to hear no excuses.
Because of dyslexia and autism. He explained what and how he did, and without displaying any signs of remorse. He tried appealing the sentence on the grounds of his age and mental functions,
I knew it.
but ultimately would be rejected.
I knew he was going to appeal that one, man. That's obvious. And use the mental health thing, man.
Number 12, Nehemiah Griego.
No, sir.
Nehemiah was just 15 years old when he took the lives of all of his family members, which included both his.
Did y'all hear what they just said? 15 years old, killed his whole family.
Was just 15 years old when he took the lives of all of his family members, which
Wow.
included both his parents and 3 younger siblings.
Come on, dog. What the little siblings got to do with it, man? That don't
He
make
assaulted
no
the
sense,
5 innocent
bro.
people using 2 different weapons. In October of 2015, Nehemiah pled guilty for his crimes. Because he was a minor at the time that he committed the crimes, a family court judge proposed sentencing him accordingly. But the prosecution appealed this.
If he get away, if he could ever walk out of jail after killing 5 people, man, that says something about the system. Let's see.
The decision was overturned in 2019. He was then sentenced as an adult and agreed to speak to the police without a lawyer present when he was arrested. He said that
Hey, don't speak to them police without them lawyers, man. Do not do that. That's a kid. I don't even know if they can do that with a kid, though.
he was angry at his mother. He faced a sentence of up to 120 years because of the multiple victims, including children. But he was ultimately sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences with credit given for the 6 years and 285 days.
Listen, he got credit for 6 years on his life sentence, man. That's disrespectful just to even say some shit like that.
Concurrent life sentences with credit given for the 6 years and 285 days that he'd already served. He had to spend 30 years in prison before being eligible for parole and stood calmly while the sentence was read. But he apologized to his family when he spoke to the court. According to reports,
said he apologized to his family, and then you killed them all, bro.
he was quite soft-spoken and emotional. Number 13. Dylan Shoemaker. The Springfield teenager was convicted for taking the life of his girlfriend's toddler son in 2013.
Girlfriend's toddler son. Yeah, throw him away. Throw him away. Throw him away.
He was 17 years old when he was sentenced to 25 years in prison for robbing the 23-month-old Austin Smith of his life. Dylan was babysitting the little boy and his infant brother while his girlfriend was at work. According to the prosecutor, he muffled the boy's face with a pillow and struck him because he wouldn't stop crying. Shoemaker was deemed a manipulator and deceiver by 13 witnesses before being sentenced. He cried in the courtroom, but people were not convinced, and neither was the judge. His crying was considered a show that was put on to convince the judge for leniency. Everyone said that Dylan got what he deserved, and he pleaded for mercy, but didn't show any to the poor defenseless child whose life he took.
That's a baby, man.
Number 14. Damon Kemp. The 19-year-old Damon from Florida was charged for taking the lives of his two roommates. He appeared in court in a wheelchair, grimacing and screaming like he was in immense pain, but the judge didn't fall for his show and refused to grant him bail. Damon actually ran to a police officer investigating a home invasion in Jade Park apartment homes and confessed to taking the life of his friend. When the police learned his address, they drove there and found a bullet hole in the door and a shell casing on a stair nearby. Inside were the bodies of Trey Ingram and his friend Jordan Payton. Both the victims were also 19 years old. Police also found the weapon that he used about 50 feet from where they'd found Kemp. The erratic acting Damon was captured on police body camera confessing to assaulting Trey, and this behavior continued on his first appearance in court as well. He screamed and shouted God while being wheeled out on a wheelchair, and later it would be revealed that he wasn't mentally ill, but instead was under the influence. Number 15.
Man, that boy was high off some, man.
Revealed that he wasn't mentally ill, but instead was under the influence. Number 15. Mary Bell. Mary Flora Bell was just 10 years old in 1968 when she took the lives of two preschool-age boys in Scottswood.
Come on, man. A 10-year-old killing two infant toddlers, man. That's brutal, dog.
Inner suburb of Newcastle. In both cases, the young girl told the boy that he had a sore throat and offered to massage it and then strangled him.
What?
In a trial held in Newcastle in December of 1968, Bell would be convicted for both the deaths. In the trial, her actions were judged to have been committed under diminished responsibility. She also had an accomplice, a 13-year-old by the name of Norma Joyce, who assisted her in at least one of the crimes, but was acquitted of all charges. Mary Bell still remains Britain's youngest female killer. She was also diagnosed with psychopathic personality disorder, due to which her charge was changed on grounds of diminished responsibility. Her trial lasted 9 days, during which Mary Bell and Norma both testified in their defense. In December of that year, the jury retired to consider the verdict, and after almost 3.5 hours of deliberations, they reached a decision. When Norma was acquitted by the jury, she was elated and clapped her hands in excitement. But things didn't turn out so well for Mary Bell, who was convicted. She burst into tears when she heard the sentence, and her mother and grandmother were also grief-stricken and could not keep themselves from crying. She was sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, effectively an indefinite sentence of imprisonment. But after serving 12 years, she was released at the age of 23 and was granted lifelong anonymity by a court order to protect her identity and that of her family members.
Wow. The system is crazy, man. You kill two babies at 10 years old. You get out at 20. You still got your whole life, bro. Only thing you missed was middle school and high school. That's crazy, dog.
Number 16. Austin Myers. Austin Gregory Myers, along with Timothy E. Mosley, took the life of 18-year-old Justin Michael Back on January 28th of 2014 in Waynesville, Warren County, Ohio. They assaulted the poor young man at his family home because they wanted to steal a safe from his house. Their case received national media attention because of the discrepancy in sentencing of the two young offenders.
Uh-oh.
Myers and Back went to the same middle school and were childhood friends. The plan was for Myers to distract Back so that Mosley could attack him. Myers knocked on Back's door, who let the pair in. They talked for a while, but when Back went to the kitchen, the two criminals assaulted him. After he was dead, the two criminals searched for the safe and found it in a closet. Afterwards, they tried cleaning up, but later ransacked the house, loaded the stuff they'd taken into Mosley's car, and then left. Mosley, who used a
Shit.
knife to take Back's life, was sentenced to life without parole, while Alston Myers was given a death sentence.
Oh.
He became the youngest inmate on death row in Ohio. Austin was definitely shocked at this and pleaded with the judge to overturn the sentence. His words may have been apologetic, his tone and his expressions were completely blank. Number
Hey, man,
17,
stop doing
Morgan
them foul
Geyser and
crimes,
Anissa
bruh.
Ware. The two 12-year-old girls, Morgan and Anissa, were arrested for attempting to take the life of their friends in order to honor a fictional online horror character known as Slender Man. They lived
What is going on, bro? What is going on with these people trying to be like other people, imitate other shit, man? Come on, man.
in Wisconsin and decided to lure their friend Peyton Leutner into a forest. The girls stabbed Peyton a total of 19 times in hope of appeasing the fictional character. Peyton, however, managed to crawl to a road where she was found and taken to a hospital. Fortunately, she survived the vicious attempt on life, and despite being found not hospital. Fortunately, she survived the vicious attempt on her life, and
Fortunately,
despite being found
survived.
not guilty by mental disease or defect, the two girls were fitted to mental health institutions.
Wow.
Ware was sentenced to 25 years to life, while Geyser was given a 40 years to life sentence. 7 years later, Geyser would be granted early release, but would remain under supervision until she turned 37. Both the girls looked disheveled and remorseful when they were sentenced. Morgan was tearful when she spoke to the court and apologized amongst tears to the victim of her family.
Hey, it's a lot of early parole, early exits, and all that for these white folks, man. These black kids ain't getting the same leisure, man. That shit is foul as well. The white kids is doing the mental health thing and getting out early, man. It's wild,
18.
man.
Cameron Herron. Cameron had just turned 18 when his father gifted him a black Ford Mustang as a high school graduation gift.
What a gift.
But instead of putting it to good use, he decided to indulge in racing with his friend. The two boys were
Okay.
racing each other on the 23rd of May 2018 when Cameron crashed into a mother and her daughter on the Bayshore Boulevard. The unsuspecting Jessica Rasinger from Ohio was visiting relatives in Tampa, and she had just gone out for a morning walk with her 21-month-old daughter in a stroller. Both the boys pled guilty to taking the lives of the innocent mother and daughter. Herron decided to let a judge guide his sentence, though. He did express a lot of remorse and was expecting a lenient sentence. State guidelines would instruct that the punishment for such a crime should be 18 to 30 years imprisonment. But Cameron was actually sentenced to 24 years, 9 for the mother and 14 for the child. He was definitely not expecting this from the look of horror in his eyes when he heard the sentence. Despite wearing a mask, the terror that he felt was quite visible. His mother also cried and hugged her son before he was taken by the police. The sentence was appealed, but a 3-judge panel rejected it.
Ooh.
Number 19, Conrad Schaefer. Conrad was 15 years old when he terrorized Osceola County.
Oh yeah, you know he gone. Hey.
With his friends. He was the perpetrator of 2 random shooting incidents that cost 2 innocent bystanders their lives.
Damn.
The judge sentenced Conrad to 2 consecutive life terms in prison, and he apologized to the families in the court after hearing their statements. The deaths of David Guerrero and Roop Nareen, both students, devastated their families. He remained in his seat, his head sunk for the majority of the 2-hour hearing. However, he stood up to apologize to the families. His voice was low and remorseful, and the state attorney questioned his sincerity and called him a sociopath. He argued that locking
Is he going to use the mental health?
up for the rest of his life was the only way to ensure safety in the community. Because he was a juvenile at the time of committing the crimes, he's entitled to have his sentence reviewed in 25 years. Number 20,
25
Samantha
years.
Grigg. Samantha Grigg
Last
walked
one.
into a prison when she was supposed to walk across a high school
Wait,
graduation.
hold on.
Samantha Grigg walked
Hold on.
years.
Hold on. Hold on.
Number 20,
Last one.
Samantha Grigg. Samantha Grigg walked into a prison when she was supposed to walk across a high school graduation stage. She would be sentenced to between 6 and 15 years in prison by Clinton County Trial Court Judge Randy Tovanon. The 18-year-old from Saline could barely hold her head up as she was read her sentence for the death of Michigan State University student Dustin Frolka. Grigg had pled guilty to taking his life, an unarmed robbery. Through tears, she apologized for her role in his death and said that she never meant to harm him, despite knowing that she was driving two people who intended to rob him.
Mm.
She drove Brendan Haim, age 16, and Tyrell Brendernitz, age 17, to East Lansing, where the two attacked Frolka. When Eileen Hinka, Frolka's stepmother, spoke to the court, she listed every moment with him that she was deprived of. Most importantly, the daughter Melody was deprived of her father. Grigg wept but nodded in agreement when she demanded the maximum sentence. She, however, never looked up from the defense table. Tyrell
Oh
Brendernitz,
man.
age
Oh
17,
man. Man, oh man. This is wild, bruh. This is one of them wild ones, man. What y'all think, man? That shit is crazy, bro. A lot of them crimes was brutal. Kids killing kids, bro, and killing grandmas, man. Come on, we can't be doing that out here, dog. Let me know what y'all think was the worst one, man. Make sure y'all comment, subscribe, man. Tell a friend to tell a friend. No moral victories, man. We in the building. We taking over the game, man. Let's go.